So, a lot in that 3 hours of testimony, but I guess one of the big takeouts is that Jim Comey thinks Donald Trump's a liar. What did you make of that?
You know, one question I think a lot of people had going into this is why he documented these interactions with Trump in such detail. And of course, he released his testimony yesterday in which he had offered a pretty detailed rundown of every single conversation, meeting, or otherwise that he had with Trump. And he was asked about that today, and his answer, as you said, is pretty striking in that, you know, he said, I did this because I thought Trump might lie about our interactions. And, you know, if you pull back from, you know, all of the controversies over the past few months here, that's, you know, a pretty stunning revelation to hear the former director of the FBI say about a sitting president of the United States that he was worried that he would not be honest about their conversations, and that's why he felt the need to take such diligent notes of each of these interactions as soon as they happen. So I think that turned a lot of heads today. I'm not sure people thought Comey was going to be as blunt in saying that as he was, but that shows you how strained this relationship was, how little trust there was between James Comey and Donald Trump from the very beginning.
And Sean, of course, we also learned then that indeed, not surprisingly, it was James Comey that leaked that contemporaneous memo about one of those Trump meetings because, he said, he thought it might help prompt a special prosecutor to be appointed. So mission accomplished.
That was also another extraordinary moment in this hearing where Comey goes back to right after Trump fired him and suggested in a tweet that he might have tapes of this conversation or these conversations that he had. And Comey said he woke up in the middle of the night, I think a couple of nights later, and realized that, you know, well, I have these notes of these encounters. I have very, very detailed recollection of this. I should provide this to an associate and we should get this out there in the press. And indeed, it did make it out there in press reports. And when you look at the testimony that Comey released yesterday, it does square with a lot of the press reports that say, you know, here are the interactions that he had with the president. So you're right. I mean, he got, you know, he wanted a special prosecutor. There ultimately is a special prosecutor that replaced him in this investigation into Russian meddling. The question is now, where does that investigation go? How does it square with the Senate's investigation? How does it square with the House investigation? There's still a lot of unanswered questions about where this all goes with regard to Trump, with regard to his associates, with regard to Russian meddling. This was one big moment in that, I think, today, but there's still a long way to go in this, and I think a lot of unanswered questions that people are going to want to have answered in the coming weeks and months.
So we also got the confirmation that as far as Jim Comey was concerned, his sacking was over that Russia investigation by the FBI. Now, those that want to believe that that Trump or his associates colluded with Russia and that there's been a cover-up, they'll say, OK, right there, obstruction of justice, let's impeach this guy. But seems like we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, it really does seem like we're not quite there yet. And one key moment, there were many key moments, obviously, but one key moment in today's hearing was when Comey was questioned by Senator Jim Risch, a Republican, and they talked about the conversation, or at least one of the conversations that Comey recounted in his testimony, where he said Trump came to him and said, I hope you'll let this, you know, thing with Michael Flynn go, presumably alluding to the investigation into Michael Flynn. And Comey suggested that he believed that the president was essentially directing him to do this, but Senator Risch focused on the word hope and said, well, he used the word hope, so he wasn't necessarily telling you to do this, right? And of course, they didn't agree. You know, the flip side of that is he's alone in a room with James Comey. He's his superior, effectively, and he's saying, you know, I hope you'll do this. The question is, do enough people interpret that as a direction? If they do, then I think there is, you know, the argument for obstruction of justice becomes stronger. If they don't, then, you know, I think we'll see people back off of that argument. But you're right. Right now, I think the bottom line is there was nothing explosive enough or big enough in today's hearing to let all of Capitol Hill to conclude that, yes, he obstructed justice. We're seeing a lot of Republicans still defend the president right now and say that he didn't obstruct justice.
Good to have you with us, Sean. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.